Rain exploded against the stadium lights just as the final note cracked through the night. "Move back. Somebody stop them." The screaming of thousands of fans blurred into one deafening roar, while security guards pushed through the chaos behind the stage. Water drenched the massive screens above the arena, turning the glowing images of Jungkook and Jimin into trembling shadows of blue and silver. Jimin stood frozen near the edge of the platform, chest rising too fast, hair soaked against his forehead as thunder rolled over the city like a warning. Then someone in the crowd threw something. A plastic bottle slammed against the metal railing beside him. Another followed, and another. The sound made Jungkook turn instantly. For one terrifying second, the entire world narrowed into the sight of Jimin standing alone under the rain, while tens of thousands of people screamed words neither of them wanted to hear anymore. Fake. Attention seekers, liars. Jungkook's pulse pounded violently in his ears. He had spent years learning how to endure hate silently. Years smiling through exhaustion, through scandals, through cameras that followed every breath he took. But tonight felt different. Tonight, Jimin looked tired in a way that frightened him. Not physically, emotionally, like someone standing at the edge of disappearing. The rain became heavier, cold water slid down Jungkook's neck as he ran across the slick stage without thinking. Staff members shouted after him, but he ignored every voice around him. Jimin didn't even look up when Jungkook reached him. That scared him most. Usually Jimin would smile, or joke, or pretend everything was fine even when it clearly was. But now his eyes looked distant, unfocused beneath the flashing lights. "Hey," Jungkook breathed softly. Jimin swallowed hard. The massive LED screens continued replaying moments from the concert behind them, cruelly bright against the darkness. Clips of them laughing together earlier that night only made the crowd louder. Rumors had been spreading for months. Videos analyzed frame by frame. Every glance between them dissected online. Every interaction turned into headlines neither of them could escape. Some fans loved them for it, others hated them. And somewhere along the way, the pressure started crushing everything that once felt natural between them. "You should go inside," Jimin whispered. Rainwater dripped from his jawline as he stared toward the audience without really seeing them. Jungkook frowned. "I'm not leaving you here." Object landed near the stage. Security immediately moved closer. Jimin finally laughed softly, but the sound was hollow. "They're angry again." The words cut deeper than Jungkook expected, not because they were true, but because Jimin sounded used to it. Jungkook looked at him carefully, the trembling hands hidden near his sides, the exhausted darkness beneath his eyes, the way his shoulders curled inward like he was trying to make himself smaller despite standing in front of an entire stadium. Jungkook suddenly remembered something from years ago. A trainee room, cheap fluorescent lights, Jimin sitting alone at 3 a.m. with headphones on because he thought nobody noticed him crying. Back then, Jungkook had been too young to understand how lonely ambition could become. Now he understood too well. Without hesitation, Jungkook pulled off his black jacket and stepped closer. Jimin blinked in surprise. "What are you doing?" Instead of answering, Jungkook gently placed the soaked jacket over Jimin's shoulders, shielding him from the relentless rain even though it barely helped anymore. The crowd erupted louder, cameras flashed everywhere. But Jungkook didn't care, not tonight. His fingers lingered briefly against Jimin's cold hands before he pulled away. "You'll get sick," Jungkook muttered quietly. For the first time that night, Jimin looked directly at him, and Jungkook nearly lost his breath, because behind Jimin's exhausted smile was something dangerously fragile, something close to breaking. "You always do this," Jimin whispered. "What? Protect me even when it ruins you too?" Thunder above them cracked violently. Jungkook looked away first. Because Jimin didn't know the truth, or maybe he did. Jungkook had stopped understanding where the line existed anymore between friendship, loyalty, fear, and the terrifying feeling growing inside his chest whenever Jimin looked at him like this. The managers finally rushed onto the stage with umbrellas and urgent voices. "We need to go now." But neither of them moved immediately. The rain soaked through their clothes completely while the audience continued screaming from every direction. Some were chanting their names lovingly. Others shouted accusations neither could escape. Jimin closed his eyes for a second, then quietly said, "I'm tired, Jungkook." Physically, emotionally, soul-deep tired, Jungkook felt panic twist sharply inside him because Jimin almost never admitted weakness aloud. "Come on," Jungkook said gently. "Let's leave together." The word lingered strangely between them. Jimin finally nodded once. As they walked off stage side by side beneath the storm, thousands of cameras captured the image that would spread across the internet within minutes. Jungkook shielding Jimin with his jacket, while rain poured endlessly around them. Neither of them realized that single moment would become the beginning of everything falling apart. Or perhaps the beginning of finally telling the truth they had both been hiding for years. Backstage smelled like wet fabric, overheated electronics, and panic. Staff members moved frantically through narrow hallways, while security guards monitored social media reactions in real time. Screens glowed everywhere with headlines already exploding across the internet. Jungkook and Jimin cause massive controversy during concert. Divided over emotional stage moment. BTS members crossing the line again. Jimin avoided looking at any of it. He sat silently in the dressing room while makeup artists quietly cleaned rainwater from his face. Nobody spoke much. The atmosphere felt unbearably tense. Jungkook stood near the doorway watching him, watching the way Jimin forced tiny smiles whenever staff checked on him, watching the exhaustion he tried so hard to hide. And beneath all of it, Jungkook noticed something else tonight. Fear, real fear. The room gradually emptied until only the two of them remained. Rain still hammered against the building outside. For a while, neither spoke. Then Jimin suddenly asked, "Do you ever wish we were normal?" Jungkook leaned against the wall slowly. "Normal people don't survive what we survived. That's not an answer." Settled heavily again, Jungkook looked down at his hands. He remembered the years of training, the loneliness, the impossible expectations, the endless cameras, every sacrifice they made together. Normal had disappeared from their lives long ago. Finally, he said quietly, "Sometimes I wish people would stop deciding who we're allowed to care about." Jimin's breathing faltered almost invisibly. Outside, thunder rolled again. Jimin stared at the floor for several seconds before speaking softly. "You know what scares me most?" Jungkook shook his head. "That one day everyone will hate us enough that you'll leave too." The confession hit harder than any screaming crowd ever could. Jungkook immediately stepped forward. "Say that, but it could happen." "It won't. You don't know that." Crouched in front of him suddenly, forcing Jimin to meet his eyes. "I said it won't." The intensity in Jungkook's voice startled both of them. Jimin stared at him silently. Close enough now, Jungkook could see every detail. The faint trembling in Jimin's lips, the rain still caught in his dark eyelashes, the sadness he carried so carefully where nobody else could see. Something inside Jungkook hurt unbearably. Because the world only saw idols, not this. Not the human being quietly falling apart in front of him. Jimin laughed weakly after a moment. "You're staring," Jungkook finally exhaled shakily, "because you look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I haven't." That answer terrified him more than he expected. The storm outside continued endlessly through the night while the city lights blurred against the rain-covered windows. And somewhere deep inside Jungkook, a truth he had buried for years began becoming impossible to ignore anymore. Not tonight. Not after seeing Jimin standing alone beneath the storm while the world screamed at them both. Because all Jungkook could think about now was one horrifying realization. If Jimin ever truly broke, Jungkook didn't know if he would survive it either. Jimin took the phone from Jungkook's hand before he could stop him. Rain continued sliding down the hotel windows, while the glow from the screen illuminated Jimin's exhausted face in pale blue light. For several seconds, he said nothing. He only watched the video replay again and again, Jungkook running through the storm, the jacket around Jimin's shoulders, the way they looked at each other afterward. The comments below moved too fast to read completely, but certain words kept appearing repeatedly. "Too intimate, something is going on. Look at Jungkook's expression, they're hiding something." Jimin's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Jungkook immediately noticed. "Stop reading them." Didn't respond. Another notification appeared, then another. News articles, fan edits, slow-motion clips, speculations spreading across every platform faster than wildfire. The room suddenly felt suffocating. Jungkook stepped closer carefully. "Give me the phone." Finally looked up. His eyes looked strangely distant now. "Do you think they're wrong?" The question hit like cold water. Jungkook froze completely. Outside, thunder rolled across the city again. Jimin swallowed hard. "About us." Silence, dangerous silence. Jungkook could hear his own heartbeat louder than the rain now, because there it was. The question neither of them had ever dared ask directly before, not after years of avoiding it, not after carefully pretending certain feelings didn't exist. Jimin laughed softly, but there was pain hidden inside it. "Forget it." Tried handing the phone back, but Jungkook didn't take it immediately. Instead, he stared at Jimin carefully, really stared at him. The tired eyes, the vulnerable expression. The fear hidden beneath the question itself. Jungkook realized then that Jimin wasn't asking about rumors anymore. He was asking whether Jungkook's feelings were real. And that terrified him, because the answer had stopped being simple a long time ago. "I don't know," Jungkook admitted quietly. Jimin's breathing faltered. "I used to think everything people said was ridiculous," Jungkook continued slowly. Then somewhere along the way, he stopped himself. Jimin stepped closer instinctively. "Along the way what?" Jungkook looked away first, because saying it aloud felt dangerous, too irreversible. "I started caring too much." Confession barely rose above a whisper, still it changed the entire atmosphere instantly. Jimin stared at him silently. Rain hammered harder against the windows while distant lightning flashed across the room in silver bursts. You always cared, Jimin said softly. Not like this. The words escaped before Jungkook could stop them. Both of them froze again. Jimin's lips parted slightly. Jungkook immediately regretted speaking, not because it wasn't true, but because it was every terrifying part of it, years of hidden affection, protectiveness that had become overwhelming, jealousy he never admitted, the unbearable way his chest tightened whenever Jimin looked hurt, tired or lonely. None of that felt safe anymore. Jimin lowered his eyes slowly. You know what the worst part is? He whispered. Jungkook shook his head faintly. I think I understand exactly what you mean. The room went completely still. Jungkook forgot how to breathe. Jimin's voice trembled slightly now, as if even speaking honestly hurt him. That's why tonight scared me so much. Stared at him. When you ran back to me on stage, Jimin swallowed hard. I realized you would destroy yourself trying to protect me. I would never regret protecting you. That's the problem. Their eyes locked. Everything between them suddenly felt exposed now. No jokes, no hiding, no pretending. Only raw honesty hanging dangerously in the silence. Jungkook stepped closer without realizing it. What do we do? Jimin looked shattered by the question itself, because neither of them had an answer. How could they? They belonged to the world before they ever belonged to themselves. Every movement analyzed, every emotion watched, every mistake immortalized forever online. And now the line between friendship and something far more painful had blurred so badly neither could separate it anymore. Jimin laughed weakly, though tears suddenly glistened in his eyes. Maybe if we had met as normal people. Don't. I can't think about that. Jimin's expression softened instantly. Why not? Jungkook looked down at the floor for several seconds before finally whispering, because I think I would have loved you too much. The sentence broke something between them completely. Jimin's breath caught sharply. Jungkook closed his eyes immediately afterward, as if he could somehow take the words back, but he couldn't. They were already real now, hanging permanently in the air between them. When Jungkook finally opened his eyes again, Jimin was crying silently, not dramatically, not loudly, just quiet tears slipping down his face while the storm raged outside the windows. Panic immediately flooded Jungkook's chest. Idiot, Jimin whispered shakily, laughing through tears. Why would you say something like that now? Jungkook moved closer instinctively. I'm sorry. No, you're not. He wasn't, and that terrified him most. Jimin covered his face briefly with one hand, trying to calm himself. Do you know how long I spent convincing myself I imagined all of this? Jungkook stared at him. Jimin looked up slowly, eyes red now. The way you look at me sometimes, he whispered. The way you panic whenever I'm hurt, the way you always stay beside me even when everyone tells you not to. Voice cracked. I thought maybe I was selfish for wanting it to mean something. Jungkook's chest hurt so badly he could barely breathe. Without thinking anymore, he reached for Jimin's trembling hand. This time neither pulled away. Warm fingers intertwined carefully beneath the dim hotel lights while rain poured endlessly outside. And for the first time in years, neither of them tried pretending it meant nothing. Jimin stared down at their hands silently, then softly asked, What happens now? Jungkook honestly didn't know. The world outside this room felt brutal, unforgiving. One wrong step could destroy everything they spent their lives building. But standing here now, holding Jimin's hand while tears still shimmered in his eyes, Jungkook realized something even more frightening. Losing Jimin would hurt more, far more. The city thundered beneath the storm while silence wrapped around them again. Then Jimin suddenly smiled through tears, small, fragile, beautiful enough to ruin Jungkook completely. You know, Jimin whispered softly, your jacket still smells like you. Jungkook laughed helplessly for the first time that night. And somehow that simple sound broke the remaining tension between them. Jimin stepped closer slowly until almost no distance remained again. Close enough for Jungkook to feel his uneven breathing. Close enough that one movement could change everything forever. Neither looked away, neither spoke. The rain outside continued, falling endlessly across the sleeping city, while two exhausted hearts stood trembling quietly beneath the storm. No longer able to hide from the truth they had both carried alone for far too long.
Jungkook didn't remember who moved first. Later, he would replay the moment over and over in his mind, trying to find the exact second everything changed between them forever. Maybe it was when Jimin's fingers tightened slightly around his hand. Maybe it was the tears still shining in Jimin's eyes beneath the dim hotel lights. Or maybe it was simply because they had spent too many years standing one step away from the truth. Whatever it was, the distance between them disappeared quietly. Jimin leaned forward first, not enough to kiss him, just enough for his forehead to rest lightly against Jungkook's shoulder, and that tiny gesture alone nearly shattered Jungkook completely, the warmth of him, the trembling breath against his neck, the unbearable trust hidden in such a small movement. Jungkook slowly wrapped one arm around Jimin without thinking. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the city, but inside the room everything suddenly felt still. Safe. For the first time all night, Jimin's breathing gradually calmed. "You're shaking," Jungkook whispered. Jimin laughed weakly against his shoulder. "You're one to talk." Was true. Jungkook's heartbeat felt violent enough to crack open his ribs. He had imagined moments like this before during sleepless nights he never admitted to anyone. Moments where he stopped pretending his feelings were temporary. Moments where Jimin looked at him like this, not as a bandmate, not as someone sharing the same stage, but as someone painfully important. Reality felt far more terrifying, because now there was no escaping it anymore. Jimin pulled back slowly after a while, though his hand never left Jungkook's. "What are we supposed to call this?" he asked quietly. Jungkook stared at him. The question sounded simple. It wasn't. Years of friendship, years of trust. Years of hidden emotions growing silently beneath fame, pressure, and fear. No single word could survive all of that. "I don't know," Jungkook admitted honestly. Jimin smiled sadly. "That's the scary part." Briefly illuminated the room in silver light, revealing how exhausted they both looked, not just tonight. For years, Jungkook brushed damp strands of hair away from Jimin's forehead carefully before he could stop himself. The touch lingered. Jimin closed his eyes for a second. And Jungkook suddenly realized something heartbreaking. Jimin wasn't used to being comforted, not truly, not without cameras, not without expectations attached to it. The realization hurt more than it should have. "You should rest," Jungkook murmured softly. Jimin opened his eyes again. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" The vulnerability in the request made Jungkook's chest ache instantly. "Of course." Looked relieved so quickly it almost broke him. They moved quietly into the bedroom while rain continued pouring outside. The city lights beyond the windows flickered through the darkness like distant stars drowning beneath water. Jimin sat at the edge of the bed first, still wearing Jungkook's oversized jacket. Jungkook noticed again how small Jimin looked inside it. Something warm and painfully affectionate twisted inside his chest. Jimin asked softly after catching him staring. "You look cute." Immediately groaned and covered his face. "You seriously need to stop saying things like that." "It's true. That's exactly why it's dangerous." Jungkook laughed quietly. God, he had missed hearing Jimin laugh naturally, not the practiced laughs for cameras, not the careful smiles during interviews. This, real warmth, real softness. Jimin looked up at him slowly, expression gentler now. "You know, tonight was awful." "Yeah, but somehow this is the first moment all day I can actually breathe." Jungkook's heart tightened painfully again. He sat beside Jimin carefully, shoulder brushing against his. Neither moved away. The silence between them no longer felt uncomfortable now, only fragile, like something precious they were both afraid to disturb. Jimin eventually leaned sideways until his head rested lightly against Jungkook's shoulder again. "You smell like rain," he murmured sleepily. "Do you? That's because you threw your jacket at me dramatically in front of the entire world." Smiled faintly. "I wasn't being dramatic. You literally ran through a storm like someone in a movie scene. You were standing alone." Answer came too quickly, too honestly. Jimin fell silent after that, then very quietly asked, "Would you always come back for me?" Jungkook didn't hesitate. "Yes." The certainty in his own voice startled him, but not as much as the expression on Jimin's face afterward, because Jimin looked like someone hearing the one thing he had secretly needed for years. His eyes shimmered again. "You make it impossible not to need you," he whispered. Jungkook looked away immediately, overwhelmed by how deeply those words reached inside him. The storm outside softened gradually into quieter rain. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Jimin's breathing eventually became slower, heavier with exhaustion. Jungkook thought he had fallen asleep until Jimin suddenly spoke again, voice barely audible. "Do you ever think about leaving all of this?" Jungkook frowned slightly. "The industry, everything." The question lingered heavily between them. Jungkook understood immediately what Jimin really meant, leaving the pressure, the expectations, the endless fear of being watched. Sometimes he dreamed about it secretly. A normal life somewhere far away, no cameras, no rumors, just peace. But reality was crueler than dreams. "We can't disappear," Jungkook whispered eventually. "I know." Jimin sounded disappointed by the truth, even though he already understood it. After a long silence, he quietly added, "Sometimes I wish people loved us less." Looked down at him carefully. Jimin's eyes remained fixed on the rain-covered windows across the room. "Because if they loved us less," Jimin continued softly, "maybe we could belong to ourselves a little more." Sadness in his voice cut deep. Jungkook gently intertwined their fingers again. "You still belong to yourself." Smiled weakly. "Do I?" Neither answered after that. Because both of them knew fame had stolen pieces of them long ago. Their privacy, their freedom, even the ability to understand their own feelings safely. Yet somehow, despite all of it, this moment felt real enough to survive the noise outside. Jimin slowly closed his eyes again. This time exhaustion finally won. Within minutes he fell asleep leaning against Jungkook's shoulder, still holding his hand tightly even unconsciously. Jungkook stayed completely still, afraid moving would wake him. Afraid this fragile piece would disappear. He studied Jimin's sleeping face quietly beneath the dim golden lights, the faint tear stains still visible near his eyes, the exhaustion carved into his features, the trust. God, the trust. Jungkook realized then how deeply terrifying love truly was, because somewhere along the way, Jimin had become more than important, more than precious. He had become the person Jungkook instinctively ran toward in every storm, and that kind of love could destroy people like them, especially once the world noticed. As if summoned by the thought itself, Jungkook's abandoned phone suddenly lit up again across the room. Notification after notification flooded endlessly through the darkness. The internet still hadn't calmed down. If anything, things were becoming worse. Videos from backstage were leaking now, photos of them entering the hotel together. New headlines spreading faster every minute. Jungkook stared at the glowing screen from across the room while Jimin slept peacefully against him for the first time in weeks. A strange fear settled heavily inside his chest, because tonight had changed something irreversible between them. And deep down, Jungkook knew the world outside was not going to let them keep this fragile happiness easily. Morning arrived slowly beneath grey skies and endless rain. Jungkook hadn't slept at all. He remained sitting against the headboard with Jimin still asleep beside him, curled slightly toward his shoulder like his body had unconsciously decided that was the safest place to stay. The city outside looked cold and blurred through the rain-covered windows. For a few quiet hours the world had almost felt distant, peaceful. Then Jungkook checked his phone again, and reality returned immediately. Millions of posts, articles in multiple languages, fans fighting across every platform. Their names trending worldwide. Some people defended them passionately, insisting the moment on stage was simply emotional friendship. Others were far crueler, attention seekers, manipulators, disgraceful. Jungkook's jaw tightened as he scrolled. One video in particular had already reached terrifying numbers online. A slowed-down backstage clip taken secretly by someone from the staff hallway, Jimin holding Jungkook's hand for barely 2 seconds before entering the elevator. The comments underneath made Jungkook feel sick. They're basically confirming it now. Why are they acting like this publicly? Someone separate them already. Jungkook locked the phone instantly. His chest felt heavy again. He looked down at Jimin sleeping beside him, completely unaware. For now, Jimin looked younger when asleep, softer, less burdened by the exhausting weight he carried every day. Jungkook gently brushed a strand of hair away from his forehead again before stopping himself halfway. He was becoming too obvious, too careless, and maybe that would have terrified him more before last night. But now he wasn't sure anymore. Jimin shifted slightly in his sleep, fingers tightening instinctively around Jungkook's sleeve. The tiny action alone made Jungkook's chest ache. "Go," Jimin murmured weakly, barely awake. Jungkook froze, his voice sounded so vulnerable, so afraid. "I'm here," Jungkook whispered immediately. Jimin slowly opened his eyes after a moment. For several seconds neither moved, neither spoke. Morning light filtered softly across the room while rain tapped quietly against the windows. Then realization slowly returned to Jimin's face. Everything from last night, the confessions, the tears, the way they held each other beneath the storm. A faint blush rose instantly across his cheeks. Jungkook looked away first before his heartbeat embarrassed him completely. "Morning," he muttered awkwardly. Jimin stared at him for another second before laughing softly. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." That only made Jimin laugh harder. The sound felt warm enough to melt something inside Jungkook instantly. God, he really was doomed. Jimin sat up slowly, still wrapped in Jungkook's jacket from last night. "Did you sleep at all?" "No, you should have woken me up. You needed rest." Jimin's expression softened again. "You always take care of me first." Jungkook didn't answer because denying it had become impossible now. Silence settled comfortably between them until Jimin finally noticed the phone lying nearby. His smile faded immediately. "Bad, is it?" Jungkook hesitated. That alone gave Jimin the answer. The older man exhaled quietly and reached for the phone himself this time. Jungkook watched nervously as Jimin scrolled. His expression gradually changed, first exhaustion, then disappointment, then something closer to hurt. The room became unbearably quiet. Jimin eventually whispered, "They really hate us." "No. Not everyone, but enough people." Jungkook moved closer instantly. "Jimin, I know we signed up for attention," Jimin interrupted softly, "but sometimes I wonder what we actually did wrong." Sadness in his voice felt unbearable. Jungkook carefully took the phone away from him. "You didn't do anything wrong," laughed faintly though it sounded broken. Then why does it feel like loving someone too much is treated like a crime? The sentence stole the air from Jungkook's lungs. Because Jimin said it so quietly, so honestly, as if he hadn't even realized the confession hidden inside his own words. Their eyes met instantly afterward, and both of them understood. Jimin's breathing faltered first. Jungkook's heart slammed painfully against his ribs. Neither looked away, not this time. Then suddenly, a violent knocking exploded against the hotel door, both of them startled immediately. Jungkook, Jimin, manager, urgent voice, panic. Jungkook stood quickly while Jimin's expression darkened with dread. The knocking came again. We need to talk right now. Atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Cold fear spread through Jungkook's chest, because he knew that tone, scandal tone, problem tone. Jimin stood slowly beside him, face pale now. Neither spoke while Jungkook walked toward the door. The moment it opened, 3 managers entered immediately with tense expressions. One of them shut the door behind them. Another held a tablet already displaying headlines and screenshots flooding social media. Nobody smiled, nobody even sat down. Jungkook's stomach dropped. What happened? He asked quietly. The oldest manager looked exhausted. A staff member leaked private backstage footage from last night. Jimin's face drained of color. Much footage, the manager hesitated, too long, then finally answered, enough to create serious problems. Jungkook immediately grabbed the tablet. Videos played automatically across the screen, him holding Jimin's hand backstage, Jimin leaning against him in the hallway, another blurry clip from the hotel entrance showing Jungkook placing a protective hand against Jimin's back while guiding him through the rain. None of it looked scandalous by normal standards, but for people already obsessed with rumors, it was enough. Comments exploded everywhere beneath the videos. Something is definitely happening. Not even trying to hide it anymore. This is uncomfortable to watch. Jungkook clenched his jaw hard. Jimin remained completely silent beside him, too silent. One of the managers finally spoke carefully. The company wants you both to avoid appearing together publicly for a while. The sentence hit the room like shattered glass. Jungkook looked up sharply. What? It's temporary. No, the refusal came instantly. Everyone froze. Jungkook rarely argued directly with management, but the thought of deliberately avoiding Jimin now after last night felt unbearable. The manager sighed tiredly. You don't understand how serious this is becoming. No, Jungkook said coldly. You don't understand. Immediately touched Jungkook's arm gently. It's okay. Jungkook turned toward him in disbelief. It's not okay. Jimin forced a weak smile that completely failed to hide the hurt in his eyes. We've dealt with worse. Jungkook knew him too well now, knew the difference between real strength and survival pretending to look calm, and right now Jimin looked devastated. The manager continued carefully. Until things calm down, it's safer if interactions between you two remain limited. Limited, the word alone made Jungkook irrationally angry. As if their feelings were suddenly dangerous objects needing control, as if comfort itself had become forbidden. Jimin lowered his gaze quietly. Jungkook realized then that Jimin was already preparing himself emotionally to accept it, to sacrifice his own feelings again for everyone else's comfort. Something inside Jungkook snapped painfully at the sight. He repeated more firmly. The room fell silent. Jimin looked at him with visible alarm now. Jungkook, I'm serious. One manager rubbed his forehead in frustration. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Almost laughed bitterly. They were asking him to step away from the person who had spent years silently surviving beside him, the person who cried himself to sleep from pressure, the person Jungkook had finally admitted loving only hours ago, and they expected him to act normal about it. Jimin stepped closer carefully. Maybe we should just cooperate for now. Looked at him immediately. The sadness hidden behind Jimin's calm expression hurt worse than anger ever could, because Jimin genuinely believed he deserved to be left alone again if it protected everyone else. That realization shattered Jungkook completely. He looked directly at the managers and quietly said words even he didn't fully plan before speaking. I'm not abandoning him because people are uncomfortable with how much I care. Silence, absolute silence. Jimin stared at him like he had stopped breathing. The managers looked horrified, and somewhere outside the hotel windows, rain continued falling endlessly across the city, while the fragile secret between them finally began breaking into the open.